am Paul, a late diagnosed autistic human being from France living in the UK, and I thought it would be fun to take some online autism tests today. And in my last video on autistic masking, I mentioned that I score highly on the CAT-Q test, which is the autism masking or camouflaging test. Basically, all of these tests can be found on embraceautism.com. I'll list everything down below as usual. And those are great tests. I think a lot of the self-diagnosed or just late diagnosed autistic community, most of us took these tests at one point or another, probably multiple times. Personally, I took those tests once pretty early on when I didn't know much about autism yet. Then I took them again a few weeks later when I had a better idea of what autism was, and every time I tried to be very pessimistic in the way that I took the test and I answered the questions. So what I mean by that is I wanted the results to be as accurate as possible. So for example, if I did something, I wasn't gonna be like, yes, I do it absolutely all of the time. I just said I do it a little bit, like I was making a conscious effort to be pessimistic so that the results would be more realistic, more accurate, And then I compared the results of the tests before and after, and they were kind of similar. But the second time around, when I knew a bit more about autism, the scores were a bit higher because I knew, for example, what they meant when they said I collect categories of things like birds and cars. In the past I would have been like, nope. And then afterwards I knew that the wording is a bit weird, but it's not just birds and cars and stuff, and I actually do collect information and stuff like that, so I could give more accurate answers the second time around. Anyways, so I'm recording on my phone as usual, and I have my laptop open here, and I'm gonna be recording my laptop screen so that I can be taking the test at the same time that I'm talking to the camera. I hope this all works out because I've never done that before, but it's fun. Okay, so I'm gonna be taking the CAT-Q test. Let's go. Okay, so the CAT-Q. Please read each statement below and choose the answer that best fits your experience during social interactions. 1. When I'm interacting with someone, I deliberately copy their body language or facial expressions. So I would say I do that to some extent. I mean, consciously, they say deliberately, so I'm thinking like consciously copying their body language. I would say I somewhat agree. I wouldn't say it's something I do a lot, but it has happened for sure. Question 2, I monitor my body language or facial expressions so that I appear relaxed. 100%. So in every social situation, I monitor everything about my body, basically, as I mentioned in my previous video. Nothing is natural for me. I feel like I don't know how to be a human anymore in those situations, and then I have to make a conscious effort for everything. Nothing happens naturally, basically. And that question is so that I appear relaxed. So I definitely try to appear relaxed, but I know it definitely fails because I've been told multiple times throughout my life that I looked super tense even though I was making a conscious effort to appear relaxed. So I would say I strongly agree. 3, I rarely feel the need to put on an act in order to get through a social situation. So no, I definitely put on an act. I'm not sure I like the phrasing of putting on an act because there's already so much stigma around people thinking that autistic masking is some kind of dishonesty, of being dishonest, of taking advantage of the other person, being manipulative or something like that, which isn't what autistic masking is at all. So I don't like it when the phrasing kind of implies that. But anyways, putting on an act, I definitely like I mentioned in my previous video, like if I'm not feeling well for whatever reason, I will pretend that I'm completely fine. And yeah, it's a lot of pretending, which is exhausting. So I would say I agree. 4, I have developed a script to follow in social situations. So I definitely do some scripting. I wouldn't say it's as strong as some other people. Whenever I have to make a phone calls are terrible for me. I will write a script. It's not necessarily like, in the past I have written like full scripts with like every word that I was supposed to say, but I find it difficult to follow that in stressful situations. So instead I prefer writing down bullet points of everything that I want to say. That reassures me, and I make sure that I don't forget to say anything important. There were times when I would copy things from movies. I mentioned that in my video on childhood trauma. There was, for example, I have a very vivid memory of watching Harry Potter 4, The Goblet of Fire, and at the beginning when Harry meets Mr. Diggory, Cedric's father, Mr. Diggory says like, I'm glad to finally meet you. I don't remember exactly what they say, and then Harry looks at him and he's like, me too. Like, I don't even remember what they say, but anyways. And I remember thinking, oh wow, Harry looks so cool. He looks so natural. He looks like that's like a successful interaction because he is likable. He seems confident, he seems nice and stuff. And so I thought, I need to do that. I need to try to do that. And the following day I tried to do that and failed. I failed miserably and I felt so bad about myself. So I guess that's the kind of, I think further in the questions they mention like copying from movies and stuff, but that's the kind of thing I would do. Not so much anymore as an adult. Like I said, it's mostly writing things on my notes, on my phone, but I have like phrases that I use in certain situations. For example, when someone says, hi, how are you? I will always say like, fine, and you? No matter what the situation is, that's always what I'm gonna say. My partner has a different one. He always says like, not too bad, what about you? Because he heard that a lot of British people said not too bad, so then he picked it up and that's his go-to phrase. I would say that I somewhat agree. 5, I will repeat phrases that I've heard others say in the exact same way that I first heard them. I definitely have that thing of like repeating things that people say. Then it falls into echolalia, but in the context of social situations, yeah, I have in the exact same way. I wonder if they mean the phrasing or the tone of voice. That's the thing with these tests, is it's hard sometimes to understand what they mean, which is why on embraceautism.com they have for each test they have ratings for the accuracy and the whether it's easy to understand or whatever. I would say that I somewhat agree. 6, I adjust my body language or facial expressions so that I appear interested by the person I'm interacting with. So, as I mentioned in my last video, I'm not very good at masking. And a lot of the time, I can't be bothered, honestly, because I'm not that interested in the social interaction. But let's say that someone I care about is telling me about something that's important to them, and I'm really not interested, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. I will definitely make an effort. I don't know how effective it is, but that's not what the question is asking. So yeah, I definitely agree. 7, in social situations, I feel like I'm performing rather than being myself. That just sums it all for me. That's exactly what I felt for years, which is why when I started looking into autism and I took these tests, I was like, you know, that weird feeling of being like, this was written for me, right? Like, it felt like, I was like, it's an actual thing, what I've been experiencing my whole life, that no therapists could pinpoint or understand what I was saying. Like, it's an actual thing that exists. I'm not the only one. What? So yeah, I strongly agree. I don't feel like I'm being myself most of the time in social situations, unfortunately, because growing up as an undiagnosed autistic person, I quickly realized that the real me wasn't very socially acceptable. So I had to perform, I had to hide my true self, which is why a lot of autistic people struggle with the phrase just be yourself, because it's just not possible for us. Number 8, in my own social interactions, I use behaviors that I have learned from watching other people interacting. Definitely, yeah, I have spent a lot of time watching other people interact with each other. Like I said, for example, in movies, and I would be like, okay, that's how they do it. Okay, that's what they say, that's how they say it, blah blah blah. A lot of the time when I try to do it, I'm not very successful at it, but I definitely do that. So I would say I agree. 9, I always think about the impression I make on other people. Strongly agree right away. All I think about is what people think of me. I had a terrible therapist who I talked about 4 years ago, I want to say, a French therapist. And, you know, I would tell her I had social anxiety and trauma and stuff like that. And what she said to me, I was like, I can't help thinking about like everything I do, everything I say, basically monitoring my body language in social situations. I didn't know I was autistic at the time. And she would say like, maybe you should stop being so self-centered. Maybe if you worried less about yourself and more about the other person. I was like, yeah, great advice. Very effective, yeah. Making me feel like an asshole, making me feel like I was selfish and egocentric. That was great. Thanks. So yeah, I always think about the impression I make on other people. 100% strongly agree. 10, I need the support of other people in order to socialize. Well, that's funny because like that's what I mentioned in my autism assessment. I told my therapist like I can't go anywhere without my partner. And before it was my partner, it was my parents or friends or whatever. Like I do a lot of cat sitting, for example, and most of the time when I get a new cat sitting client, I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then on the day of, I'm like so terrified at the idea of going there alone that most of the time I end up asking my partner to come with me. And like multiple times I have gone to meet cat sitting clients with my partner, and they were like so understanding. They were like, yeah, no problem, you can visit the cats together or whatever. Because if I go alone, I'm in such a state of heightened anxiety that I feel like I'm going to be physically sick. It's pretty bad. And even sometimes when I go grab the keys from a client that I already know, that I've already met, just the fact that I'm going to be having that interaction, like it's really bad for me. And like I could never go socialize without someone with me. It's first of all because I'm just so bad with back and forth conversation that a lot of the time I rely on my partner to make conversation so that I don't have to, because if I'm alone then there's lots of awkward silence and stuff like that. So yeah, I strongly agree. 11, I practice my facial expressions and body language to make sure they look natural. So as I mentioned in my last video on autistic masking, I definitely did that. I definitely do that. I would smile and ask my partner, does my smile look natural? Am I smiling enough? How much more should I do? And then practicing in front of the mirror. Definitely, because I've always been told that I wasn't doing the right expressions, or like people misunderstood how I was feeling. So I thought there must be something wrong with my facial expressions, and so I would practice them a lot. So yeah, strongly agree. 12, I don't feel the need to make eye contact with other people if I don't want to. So that's an interesting question, because the test is about masking. So if you answer strongly agree to that one, it means you're not masking that much because you don't care what people think if you don't make eye contact, basically. But that's not the case for me. So I do make a conscious effort to make eye contact even if I don't want to, which is most of the time. Because I don't want to seem weird, because masking, because people pleasing. So yeah, I would say I disagree. I don't strongly disagree, because there are times when I'm like, it's eye contact is so painful that I can't do it. Then then it would be like, but I can't, not that I don't want to. But I'm gonna say disagree. Number 13, I have to force myself to interact with people when I'm in social situations. Oh yeah, definitely. Like, it doesn't come naturally to me. Like I said, if it was down to me, there would be a lot of awkward silence in social situations, which is why I want my partner to be with me. Because yeah, it's really bad. A lot of the time I just don't know what to say to people. Like long before I was diagnosed, I would be like, what? I would say to people like, how do you know what to say to people? Like, I don't know what to say in social situations. So yeah, strongly agree. It doesn't come naturally. 14, I have tried to improve my understanding of social skills by watching other people. So it's similar to like using behaviors that I've observed in other people. Yeah, definitely in movies mostly, because I just didn't see a lot of people in my life. I lived a very sheltered life. I come from a very small family. It was just me, my parents, and my great aunt, and a couple family friends that we saw here and there, and then my friends from school. That was it. So most of my, and since I spent most of my time on my own, watching movies or playing and stuff, most of the social stuff I know comes from movies. Definitely agree. I'm gonna say agree. 15, I monitor my body language or facial expressions so that I appear interested in the person I'm interacting with. So it's a bit of a repetition with another question that we had, I guess, to verify consistency in your answers. So yeah, definitely body language, facial expressions to be interested in my person I'm interacting with. I agree. 16, when in social situations, I try to find ways to avoid interacting with others. Definitely. So yeah, I don't find myself in social situations very much anymore, but in the past when I did, or even to this day, if I found myself in a social situation, like, yeah, I'll definitely, like, I'll go to the toilet and make it last a bit longer than it should, or I will find some kind of pretext. I will be on my phone. I'll make a, I don't know, phone call, or just pretend that I'm really into something. Or I'll just, a lot of the time when I'm in a social situation with my partner, we'll be talking, just the two of us. Or I will go play with the animals, because I've always been more comfortable around animals than people. Or I will go check out the garden. I don't know, I'll find whatever I can to try and avoid interactions. I strongly agree. Like, whenever I would go to my partner's father's place, he always has a dog, so I would be spending time with the dog to try and avoid having to have an interaction. There's only so much you can do, unfortunately, without seeming rude or weird, but I'll always be trying that kind of thing. Okay, number 17, I have researched the rules of those social interactions to improve my own social skills. So yeah, I have done research online about like how to be friendly, how to socialize, basically. I agree with that. 18, I'm always aware of the impression I make on other people. Again, yes, that's all I think about, is like during the interaction, I think about what they must be thinking of me. It's usually negative. It's usually like, oh, they must think I'm so weird. And then afterwards, it's very painful because I spend hours, usually days, replaying the interaction in my head and thinking of all the cringy things I did and said. Like, even years later, there are things I did as a child or as a teenager that are over 10 or 15 years old that I still think about regularly, and I still cringe at my own memories. So yeah, I strongly agree. 19, I feel free to be myself when I'm with other people. So again, it depends who we're talking about, but for the most part, absolutely not. Like I said, I internalized that being myself was just not a good idea because people don't like that usually. So I disagree. I won't say I strongly disagree just because there are a couple people in my life that I am able to unmask around. Like I mentioned in my last video, I unmask around my partner. I used to be able to unmask around my great aunt before she passed away. And my in-laws, it's getting better. Since getting my diagnosis, I've been able to open up to them and tell them about the things that would make me more comfortable, and I've been able to unmask more around them. So 20, I learn how people use their bodies and faces to interact by watching television or films or by reading fiction. So this is specifically about body language and facial expressions, not necessarily the things that people say, like verbal language, verbal communication. So it's non-verbal communication. Reading fiction, not so much. But definitely, like I said, films, yeah. Yeah, I remember thinking like how much more expressive the actors in movies were compared to me. I was like, how can my face be so unexpressive? I really struggled with that. But yeah, I would say I somewhat agree. 21, I adjust my body language or facial expressions so that I appear relaxed. Again, yeah, definitely. It doesn't work, but I definitely do. Like, for example, especially if I'm standing, I'll make a conscious effort to like put my arms like this or just shift my weight like this, also that I appear relaxed. Like, I'll be like, if I put my hands in my pockets, then I'll look more relaxed. I'm definitely hyper aware of all that. I agree. 22, when talking to other people, I feel like the conversation flows naturally. I'm gonna put strongly disagree right away because it doesn't. Because I struggle with back and forth conversation. I struggle to know what to say to people, and when they say things to me, I struggle to know what to reply, and sometimes I give blunt answers, or sometimes I just don't even know what to say, so I won't reply anything. So no, the conversation doesn't flow naturally. It's mostly them making the other person making the conversation, and I just try my best to follow. 23, I have spent time learning social skills from television shows and films and tried to use these in my interactions. Like I said, yeah, definitely watching things from films. The memories that stuck with me the most, Hocus Pocus and Harry Potter, but I'm sure there are others. Those were just the ones that I remember the most. I agree. I like how they say try to use them in interactions, because sometimes it's not successful, but at least you try, you know. 24, in social interactions, I do not pay attention to what my face or body are doing. So yeah, I strongly disagree with that. That's all I think about, is what my face or body are doing, which makes it hard to focus on the interaction. 25, in social situations, I feel like I'm pretending to be normal. I definitely agree. Yeah, so let's see the score. 152, compensation subtotal 51, masking subtotal 52, assimilation subtotal 49. Average CAT-Q scores, autistics. Total score for females is 124. For males, it's 109, and for non-binary, it's 122. As you can see, I'm like 30 points over the average total score for female and non-binary autistic people. So I score very highly. And then of course it's like much higher compared to neurotypicals, with an average of 90 for female neurotypicals, 96 for male neurotypicals, and 109 for non-binary neurotypicals. And they say high CAT-Q scores correlate with social anxiety in both autistics and neurotypicals, with the exception of masking. In autistic people, the total CAT-Q score and the assimilation score negatively correlate with well-being. High levels of masking cause a lot of like mental health issues, increases the risk of suicide because it makes you feel like you can't be yourself ever and you're not being true to yourself and people don't love you for who you really are. It makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, basically, which is hard to lead a healthy, happy life when you have that kind of belief about yourself. So yeah, that makes sense. And in autistic people, all CAT-Q scores were correlated with depression and generalized anxiety. So yeah, a pretty high score on that, 152. Let me know in the comments what your scores are if you took the test. I remember that the other times that I took this test in the past, I got similar scores. I think I didn't ever go below 140. So yeah, pretty high. Okay, so the autism spectrum quotient test. So once again, this is on the embraceautism.com website. I will put all the relevant links down below. So for each statement below, choose one response that best describes how strongly that statement applies to you. So one is, I prefer to do things with others rather than on my own. This is, I guess it depends who I'm with. For the most part, I've always been more of a lone wolf. I would say I slightly disagree. I prefer to do things the same way over and over again. So yeah, I do have like rituals and stuff. For example, I have a very specific way of like washing my hair. There's always a reason behind it. It's like for my hair, for example, it's sensory reasons. Same thing with like showering or cleaning the kitchen. It's the thing of like having developed kind of an optimal way of doing something. And so you don't want to change that. And there's comfort and predictability in always doing things the same way. And it's something I have in common with my dad, who I suspect is autistic as well. He definitely has like, his whole day is ritualized and he always does things exactly the same way every single day, and he's so precise. And he's always said, like, why would I do it differently? Because this is the best way that I have found of doing this thing. So I'm gonna always do it this way. So yeah, it seems like a pretty autistic thing to do. So yeah, I definitely agree. If I try to imagine something, I find it very easy to create a picture in my mind. So no, I actually struggle with that, which is kind of weird because I love writing stories. I have a master's degree in creative writing, but I've always struggled with picturing things in my head when I'm reading, which is why I'm a pretty slow reader. I've never been a big reader, and I felt very bad about that my whole life because my mom was a literature teacher. She put a lot of pressure on me to read a lot, and I struggled with that. Yeah, I that's why I like to, for example, I will watch a movie and then I will read the book afterwards because I have a mental picture of what the characters look like, for example, and it's easier for me. I prefer to do it that way rather than reading the book and then watching the movie. So I definitely disagree. I don't find it very easy. 4, I frequently get so strongly absorbed in one thing that I lose sight of other things. So yeah, when I'm really into whatever I'm doing, I'm hyper focusing on it, I can easily spend like 3 hours on something, and then I realize that I am completely exhausted and I need to go to the bathroom and I need to eat and I haven't drunk enough, and like basically like yeah, I lose sight of like all of my needs and stuff. I don't have ADHD, so it's not as strong as like in my partner, for example, who has ADHD, but I definitely do that. So I would say I slightly agree, because I wouldn't say that it happens very frequently, but it does happen. 5, I often notice small sounds when others do not. Yeah, it's happened lots of times in my life where I was like a conversation with someone or something, and then I'm like, what's that noise? And people are like, what noise? Definitely agree. 6, I usually notice car number plates or similar strings of information. Yeah, there's a YouTube channel called I Am Mind blind, I believe. This person said in one of her videos that she has a thing with like numbers and car number plates and things like that, and I definitely have that. And for me, and I think it's part of the pattern recognition thing of autism. For me, I had a big thing with my electronic clock that I had in my bedroom as a child. I would find patterns and stuff in the numbers, and I could watch that for hours, and then it would be like 11:11, and I would be like, oh, I don't know if I found it so satisfying, or if it was like 1943, I would be like, oh, that's my dad's date of birth, blah blah blah. So yeah. 7. Other people frequently tell me that what I've said is impolite, even though I think it is polite. So yeah, I've definitely been accused of being rude in the past, or like, I don't know, disrespectful or intrusive or things like that, which wasn't my intention. Yeah, I'm gonna say slightly agree, because I wouldn't say that it happens frequently, but it does happen. 8. When I'm reading a story, I can easily imagine what the characters might look like. So as I said, not really. I don't have a very good imagination when it comes to that. So usually when I'm reading Harry Potter, for example, the Harry Potter books, I will imagine the characters, the actors from the movie. So I definitely disagree. I can't easily imagine what they look like. 9. I'm fascinated by dates. So dates specifically, not really. I wouldn't say so. I'm gonna say definitely disagree. 10. In a social group, I can easily keep track of several different people's conversations. I don't have a terrible multitasking skills. I am able to multitask pretty well when I'm doing well. I have a pretty good attention. I would say I slightly agree, because I don't struggle too much. In the past, when I was in group situations, which doesn't happen very often nowadays, I didn't have too much of a hard time following different conversations at once. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of focus, but I don't struggle with it that much. So I'm gonna say slightly agree. 11. I find social situations easy, so that's an easy one. I definitely disagree. I don't find social situations easy at all. Nothing about it is natural for me. 12. I tend to notice details that others do not. Definitely agree. I'm definitely detail oriented, like a lot of autistic people. 13. I would rather go to a library than a party. Definitely agree. Parties, there's lots of people, lots of noise, lots of lights, alcohol, which I don't like. That's not for me. So I find making up stories easy. I wouldn't say that it's easy to make up stories. It's a difficult process, but it's something I've been doing since I was 6 years old. And it's something I really enjoy. I would say I slightly agree, just because I don't think it's easy, but it's something I like doing. I find myself drawn more strongly to people than to things. I struggle a bit with that question, because obviously there are people I care about very much in my life that I prefer over anything else. Obviously, but in terms of like people in general, I'm gonna say that things, what they mean by things is that anything other than people, including animals. So definitely I would say slightly disagree. Find myself drawn more strongly to things and animals rather than people. 16. I tend to have very strong interests which I get upset about if I can't pursue. Yes, definitely agree. I will become obsessed with something, like for example autism these past few months. If I can't spend as much time on it as I would like, it does make me feel pretty sad. Yeah, for example, I've made a whole video about special interests, but I have had a lifelong passion for fantasy, and especially writing fantasy stories, and these past few years I've been having a writer's block, and it makes me very sad. It makes me very sad, because I constantly have that thing of like, I feel the need to write a story. I really want to write a story, but I feel stuck. So it's a big thing in my life that troubles me. The fact that I'm not able to write as easily as I would like to. So definitely agree. 17, I enjoy social chit chats. Definitely disagree. Don't know what to say. Not interested. Yeah. 18, when I talk, it isn't always easy for others to get a word in edgeways. So I would say I slightly agree. For the most part, I think I try to make myself small because I don't want to attract too much attention in social situations. It's true that when I start info dumping, I tend to speak quite quickly and say a lot of things, and it can be difficult for people to say things, and I don't like to be interrupted. I want to get all of my thoughts out there, and yeah, so I would slightly agree. 19, I'm fascinated by numbers. So like I said, I do a lot of pattern recognition in numbers. So I would say that I agree in that sense. 20, when I'm reading a story, I find it difficult to work out the character's intentions. So I don't really know about that one. I've never really thought about it. I mean, obviously it's not the first time that I'm taking this test, but I would say that I slightly disagree. 21, I don't particularly enjoy reading fiction. So like I said, I struggle a bit with reading. So I would say that I slightly disagree, because it's not that I don't enjoy it, because I love fiction, especially fantasy fiction, but I do struggle with it a bit. 22, I find it hard to make new friends. Definitely agree. That's the pain of my existence. I haven't been able to make friends since I left school. So in the past 10 years, haven't been able to make any friends. So, and the one person that I think might be a friend is like an ex-student of mine back when I used to teach French, and I don't know really where I stand, if I'm like a friend to her or more of an acquaintance. So, but I don't ever see her because she lives in London. So we talk on WhatsApp from time to time, but yeah. Definitely agree. Don't know how to make new friends at all. 23, I notice patterns in things all the time. Definitely agree. I actually think it's one of the best things about being autistic for me is the pattern recognition, especially in like psychology and stuff like that. I make a lot of connections between things. I see patterns very easily in things in life. That's very useful, I think. 24, I would rather go to the theater than a museum. So I would say I slightly disagree, because the theater can be a bit overwhelming. There's lots of people, lots of noise. Slightly disagree, but I still enjoy going to the theater. It's just I think I would slightly prefer going to a museum. 25, it does not upset me if my daily routine is disturbed. I wouldn't say that if my daily routine is disturbed, I'm not gonna have a meltdown or anything like that. It does bother me to some extent, but it's not something crazy. It does not upset me. I would say I slightly agree. 26, I frequently find that I don't know how to keep a conversation going. Definitely agree. Don't know what to say to people. I struggle with back and forth conversation. 27, I find it easy to read between the lines when someone is talking to me. I don't find it easy to read between the lines. I often miss social cues, because people don't, especially neurotypical people, don't always say what they mean. But it's something that if you'd asked me this question when I first started looking into autism, I would have said, no, I don't have an issue with that. And after months of observing my interactions with people and when I'm watching things on TV, I'm actually I miss quite a lot of things. I just didn't realize it. I didn't realize it was such a big issue. But I do miss a lot of things that are implied. If they're not said explicitly to me, I probably will miss them. So yeah, I would say I slightly disagree. Let's not be too dramatic. 28, I usually concentrate more on the whole picture rather than the small details. I slightly disagree. I'm more of a detail-oriented person than I definitely disagree, because I really struggle to see the big picture a lot of the time, which can be a problem. 29, I'm not very good at remembering phone numbers. Definitely disagree. I was really good at it. It was actually something I was very proud of as a child. I knew everybody's phone numbers and I would recite them. I have a vivid memory of being in the car with my great aunt and reciting all the phone numbers that I knew by heart. 30, I don't usually notice small changes in a situation or a person's appearance. I would say that I slightly disagree. I think I do notice small changes. 31, I know how to tell if someone listening to me is getting bored. I would say that I've developed a sensitivity to that. I definitely slightly agree. I don't always know if someone's getting bored, but for the most part, I think I can tell because of, rejection sensitive dysphoria. 32, I find it easy to do more than one thing at once. I would say that I slightly agree to some extent. Like I said, I'm not the worst at multitasking. For example, I can watch something on TV and work on something at the same time. It depends what it is. It depends. Okay, I'm gonna say slightly disagree because it really depends on what it is, and it's not necessarily something that I find easy. I'm just able to do it, but it requires a lot of focus and energy. For example, these past few months I've been in a bit of a burnout, and I'm completely incapable of that. 33, when I talk on the phone, I'm not sure when it's my turn to speak. I would slightly agree with that. For the most part, I think I know, but it's happened lots of times that I interrupted people on the phone. 34, I enjoy doing things spontaneously. I would slightly disagree, especially if it's something that involves leaving the house and being in social situations. I need to prepare myself mentally for that. 35, I'm often the last to understand the point of a joke. Definitely agree. Yeah, I often don't understand jokes, so it takes me a long time, or I need someone to explain it to me. 36, I find it easy to work out what someone is thinking or feeling just by looking at their face. So that is asking about understanding facial expressions. I would say, I don't know, it's a hard one for me. Is this what you think you're able to do and what you're actually able to do, I would say I slightly agree. I want to believe that I'm not too bad at understanding facial expressions. I'm very bad at making them, though. 37, if there's an interruption, I can switch back to what I was doing very quickly. I slightly disagree. I won't be able to switch back very quickly. No. 38, I'm good at social chit chat. Definitely disagree. 39, people often tell me that I keep going on and on about the same thing. Definitely agree. So yeah, that's something I've heard my whole life. When I'm obsessed about something, I tend to talk and talk and talk and talk about it. That's all I can think about. That's all I can talk about. And it's annoyed a lot of people. 40, when I was young, I used to enjoy playing games involving pretending with other children. So I used to do a lot of pretend play, is that what it's called? I definitely did a bit of that with other children. Most of it I did on my own because I liked to be in control, but I would say I slightly agree. 41, I like to collect information about categories of things. So that's the kind of ambiguous question that when you first look into autism, you're like, I don't collect information about categories of things. What does that even mean? But for example, I saw a video of an autistic person who had a whole Google Doc of all the breeds of dogs with information about each breed of dogs. I was like, oh yeah, that's the kind of thing I do. I remember when I was younger, I wanted to make a whole documentary about fantasy through the ages, fantasy stories through the ages, and I would have my Google Docs with all the different movie adaptations of Cinderella and things like that, Snow White. Red Riding Hood. So yeah, it's definitely something that I do. I definitely agree. I have my phone, the notes on my phone are full of information that I collect. I like to make lists of things. I have a list of all my favorite movies and TV shows on my phone, just because I like it. I like making lists. 42, I find it difficult to imagine what it would be like to be someone else. It's something that I definitely struggled with a lot more when I was younger. I've actually worked a lot on my empathy over the years. I was always empathetic, but it depends on the context. There are things where like I've always been very empathetic when it comes to someone else suffering or an animal suffering. Like I'm very much affected by that. But for a long time I struggled with putting myself in someone else's shoes and figuring out what they were feeling. And I've had to like consciously work on that. So I think I'm better at it now than I used to be. So I would say I slightly disagree. 43, I like to plan any activities I participate in carefully. I definitely agree. I have to know everything about it and stuff like that, so I can prepare myself mentally for sure. 44, I enjoy social occasions. Definitely disagree. It's a lot of stress for me. 45, I find it difficult to work out people's intentions. I would say I slightly agree, which is why I have been used and manipulated a lot in my life. So I definitely don't like. There was a person I used to call my best friend for over 15 years that turns out was using me. So, and I didn't see any of that. So 46, new situations make me anxious. Definitely agree. 47, I enjoy meeting new people. Definitely disagree. 48, I'm a good diplomat and definitely disagree. 49, I'm not very good at remembering people's dates of birth. I slightly agree. I don't know. The people that matter to me in life, I know their date of birth. But like if you're like a friend from school, I don't know. I would say I slightly disagree. There we go. 50, I find it very easy to play games with children that involves pretending. So I don't play with children ever because, I don't know any children for one, and children are scary. Children are very intimidating. I don't know how to act around children. But if I imagine having my own children and playing pretending games with them, I think I could manage. The question says I find it very easy. I would say I slightly agree. Yeah. Okay. Let's see the score. It says here, any scores of 26 or greater indicate the presence of autistic traits. The higher the score, the more autistic traits you have. 79.3% of autistic people score 32 or higher. So scores of 32 and above are particularly significant. The AQ is particularly sensitive in distinguishing between autistic and non-autistic adult females, as 92.3% of autistic females scored 32 or higher. So let's see my score. 39. So here we go. So yeah, if you want to share your results, your test results down below, feel free to do so. I have a Ko-fi page that I will link down below if you'd like to support my channel monetarily. Thanks for watching this video and commenting and liking. Don't forget to subscribe if you like my videos, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.